Hey guys, welcome to another Crossing Void video, where today I wanted to talk about the best S characters to pull for those of you struggling to pick a character from either your Perfect 10 or your Golden Time tickets. So first of all, I wanted to explain the criteria of what makes a good starting unit. First, you obviously want to pick a unit that deals the most damage. Most of the content in the game is PvE, and having a strong damage dealer at your core will allow you to easily build a team around it and progress. Picking a support or a tank won't help as much because enemies will get a lot more durable and hard to kill if you don't have a strong core. Picking one S unit for your team means that the unit should be able to thrive on its own, regardless of what other characters or crossings you have. So, for example, while a character like Kyojo, while Kyojo is really good, he's not nearly as good without his crossing with Yukina, because he needs her zero cost support skill and crossing. So I can't really recommend him unless you want to use both your Perfect 10 and your Golden Time tickets on the duo, which is actually not a bad idea if you already have a main damage dealer on your team, because Kyojo and Yukina is the most well-rounded duo in the game. They have good AoE damage, they have an AoE debuff, and easily the strongest support skill in the game, which purifies, dispels, and heals everything for 6 points, which is basically like an Akko ult. But anyway, starting off with the strong standalone core damage dealers, look no further than Shanna. Now, if you haven't got the memo already, Shanna is the most complete damage dealer in the game, with the highest attack growth stat and abilities which deal both physical and arcane damage. So it doesn't matter what defenses the enemy has. She also has the strongest bleed in the game with her second skill and her ult. And bleed is really good in this game because it's bonus damage that ignores enemy defense and shields. And her unique talent helps her deal even more damage at no cost as long as she survives, so there's that. Her crossings are not really important because she's strong on her own, but the best one I could recommend is her crossing with Yukina, because of Yukina's super high attack growth and speed, which just adds more fuel to the fire. The crossing ability is useful even at 6 points because it could help dispel some enemies, and you can use it if the enemy is not already bleeding, because bleeding skills don't stack. It only resets back to 2 turns. The only problem with her crossing with Yukina is the zero cost AoE ability that they both have, which is redundant, but the pair and attack damage is so OP, it doesn't even matter. The next unit I wanted to talk about is Mikoto, which happens to be one of the free characters you get from the start. And if you've used her, you've probably realized this too, but she's really efficient at killing the enemy. In fact, the reason I haven't used my S ticket that you saw from before is that I was able to rank up my Mikoto from B to A, and I'm kicking ass with no problem in the story mode. So yeah, she has top tier attack growth like Shanna, and has a 2-turn bleed that costs 3 instead of 4, and the bleed is a bit weaker, but one of the differences is that Shanna's fast, so you won't always have 4 points to use it by round 1, but Mikoto's slower, so it's you can easily get this 3-point skill off by turn 1, because Mikoto usually moves at the end of the turn, so they can start bleeding a bit earlier. Her talent just makes you deal even more damage, and even though it's RNG, the enemy might feel like they have to purify it, which makes them waste a turn. Considering you did it for free, it's basically a win-win situation with this passive. And lastly, with her ult is a 10 cost nuke, which is less than Shanna's 12, and it's arguably stronger because it does more damage on the turn you use it, because a lot of Shanna's ult damage goes into her bleed, which is, I mean, it does more damage over time, but that will make this the best pure finishing move in the game at only 10. The only thing that's stronger, I would say, is Alice's ult, which starts at 16, but not a lot of people have Alice. For her crossings, her best crossing, I would say, is with Thoma. Thoma's crossing has a lot of attack growth as well as a pair, and being able to pivot between AoE damage and single target damage is really useful after some enemies die. Her crossing with Shizuo, it's okay, but his attack is a bit less than Thoma's. But if you really want the healing debuff, it's useful. And her crossing with Kuriko is pretty much terrible. I'm sorry, just please don't use it. The last unit I wanted to look at is Miyuki. She also has top tier attack growth and has a dispel, 3 cost dispel instead of a bleed. This is more useful in some cases where the enemies have shields and can make up for support units who don't have one. Her ult costs 10 points like Mikoto's, and it does a bit less damage, but also debuffs the enemy, making them take more damage. However, I would say that as a finishing move, her passive makes up for it, because yeah, ulting with her passive when the enemy is below 30, they'll pretty much die without a doubt, and if they do survive, well, they're debuffed and they're probably die in one turn anyway. I mean, yeah, it still does a lot of damage, don't get me wrong, but her crossings with Zero and Kuroyuki Hime are both really good, because as a main damage dealer, both of these supports crossings have really high attack, and both of them also have a middle enemy damage, middle enemy seal at 5 cost. The only difference is that Zero's crossing has an AoE ability, and Kuroyuki Hime's has a single target ability. But even without these crossings, Miyuki's gonna kill people on her own, so don't worry about that too much. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. Those are the big 3 you should consider building your team around, and hopefully I was able to help anybody struggling to pick a character make a choice. So please like, comment, and subscribe if you appreciate the content, and bye bye.